a little bit of RESPECT. I guess I'm about to tell you what it means to me. um, so, this conversation is coming up because I was talking to a fellow teacher friend who lives in the States, and we're just talking about different cultures between the US and Canada and Japan with teaching and teachers, and how parents, public, government, etc., treat teachers. So that's the context for this a little bit. Where, yeah, I won't go into all the details about that because this is much bigger than that. But one of the things I mentioned to him, because he was saying, like, man, like when you tell people here in the States that you're a teacher, it's like laughable. And there's a lot of structural things in that culture and system where I think it's unfortunately a chicken and the egg thing a little bit, and it kind of gets circular, and it's like you've got way more teachers there, I believe, from my experiences and conversations, etc., that get into teaching for the wrong reasons and aren't good teachers, and therefore it just causes all these other problems, and then government, the structure, parents, students, etc., don't have as much respect for teachers and see them as professional babysitters, was what came up in conversation. And then that's the thing. Because of all this, then there's like lower wages, not as much respect, no, like I said, by government, by employers, by students, by parents, the general public. So then you've got people that want to get into it for the right reasons and can't take that paycheck sometimes, or that low income, if they have family and other expenses, right? They need to make a certain amount of income in order to teach, or in order to provide for their family. And if they want to do what they love, which could be teaching, maybe that's just really difficult for a lot of reasons. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. That's whatever. And I mean, again, my experiences, personal experiences, also with conversation that people I've talked to in various provinces in Canada, and where I hold different teaching certificates in different provinces too. I've just found that things are a little better here, and generally there is more respect. But in certain places there's more, and in certain places in Canada there's less. Certain cities, even certain regions of provinces, where there's, again, that the word respect comes in. And one of the things I was talking to him about that I really loved about coming to Alberta was the motto for the ATA, which is the Alberta Teachers Association. You basically, and again, this is different in the States too. Even being a sub in the States, in some states, and counties and stuff, you can be a sub right out of high school. You can just have a high school diploma and start subbing and start going into classrooms with students that were your friends that were just 1 year below you, right? And all of a sudden you're subbing and you're the teacher and the authority figure in the classroom. You don't need a teaching certificate, you don't need a degree, you don't need any experience. You can just, that's it. And part of that is because, sorry, I'm going back and forth. Part of it is because they don't have enough subs, right? Like they don't have enough subs, so they need to like scrounge or whatever. And why don't they have enough subs? I mean, that's a whole other thing. Anyway, one of the things about the ATA and the motto that they have, I don't remember what it is in Latin, but it translates to masters, not servants. And I love that. And I really feel like the ATA here does a great job of going to bat for their teachers and really believing in the rights of the teachers, and that they should be respected by, government and employers and whatever, right? And I think they just do a really great job. Obviously, things could be better in every scenario, and people have different ideas of what would be good and not good and whatever. But the whole reason that I went back to the subbing and the state thing is because here, you need a teaching certificate in order to teach. You need a teaching certificate in order to be a sub. And different, like in Saskatchewan, there's the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation, and they kind of, in a way, these organizations validate kind of your teaching certificate is given by the government, but they are kind of run in tandem with that, and you need to pay them fees. It's kind of like you need insurance in order to be in order to drive a vehicle. You need to have insurance in order for you to legally drive. Well, it's kind of like to be a teacher in a classroom. It's almost like needing insurance by being part of this organization. That's what I would compare it to. Anyway, so masters, not servants. That's what got me thinking about this thing about respect. I love that motto because I'm also a person who believes that in most circumstances you should be holding a degree in your teaching area aside from just an education degree in order to teach your subject matter. A degree doesn't mean that you necessarily are proficient in your subject matter that you're teaching, but it's a better sign that you are and you've committed to that and that you love that subject area and you know it very well. You had to pass that course somehow. It doesn't necessarily mean you have a passion for teaching either, though. That's the weird thing about, and this is more about teaching than I thought. That's the weird thing about teaching high school and elementary school, middle school versus post-secondary, is that post-secondary, one of the major complaints that so many people, myself included, have talked about is that you don't need to know how to teach in order to teach in post-secondary. You just have to have like a master's basically in your subject area. Be like, this dude knows what he's talking about. But that doesn't mean he knows how to relay the information to the student, he or she or they. The individual, the instructor, professor, whatever, doesn't necessarily know how best to teach because they don't have to get an education degree. So that's an interesting thing there. Anyway, masters, not servants. I really love that motto because, yes, we are here to technically, I guess, serve students, serve public in ways that other professions do as well. But there's a difference, and there's a certain amount of there's a certain amount that's required of us to be a teacher, right? Like having a degree in education. It is a profession, you know. I strongly believe that with a profession, there's professionalism. Does every single teacher, exemplify that? Absolutely not. And there's plenty of teachers here who get into teaching for the wrong reasons as well, whether it be for the money, the benefits, for job security. And there's a lot of things that are broken with our system too, because I might end up, this is all going to be about teaching. It's not going to be about respect. I don't know what it's going to be about anymore. Okay, so there's a lot of things that are broken with our system too, especially when it comes down to things like, in post-secondary as well, but things like tenure and just like, once you got a full-time permanent contract, like it's really hard to get fired. That's not necessarily a good thing at all. There should be a more active review process. You should be, you're expected to do professional development, but it's kind of like, unless you do something crazy, you're not going to get fired. Whereas I think that teachers should be pushed harder by their administration to do better, to actually be reviewed properly on, are you actually following the curriculum? Are you, teaching what you're supposed to be teaching? Being well liked by students means nothing. It doesn't mean that you're a good teacher, right? It doesn't mean that they are getting the information they need to get, that you are pushing them to think critically, that you are doing all these other things other than the curriculum that you're supposed to be doing, that you've provided a safe space for a student. Like, being nice is completely, incredibly, overwhelmingly overrated as far as applying attributes to a teacher. Being nice. I know a lot of really nice teachers that suck at teaching. That just suck. Coincidentally, we're coming from a context where I've had students write me, a student specifically I'm thinking of right now, write me a note on, like, an endearing note on, like, hey, you're not the nicest guy around, but, like, man, if you weren't here, like, we'd really miss you, and, like, you're a great teacher, and whatever else. And I'm acknowledging my context as a bias in a way that obviously I don't value. But this is before teaching, before getting into the profession, whatever. That I don't value nice. I value what's right, and efficiency. Like when I'm out in public, do I need my cashier to be nice to me? I certainly don't want them to be rude. But what I really need is efficiency. That's part of what their job should be, is doing what they need to do in an efficient way, getting things moving, and doing it correctly. I don't need small talk. I just need whatever, like, is this everything? Can I help you with this? Whatever. But I don't need, like, how was the weather? And blah, 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 talking for 5 minutes, because that's the opposite of efficient, So, anyway, I think it's incredibly overvalued being nice. is one of those things where it's like, yeah, we've got teachers that are nice, and then we've got students who don't know what the hell they're doing when they get to the next class because, they or being nice, sometimes is completely manipulating the system in a negative way, which is passing students along when they shouldn't be, or giving them marks they don't deserve, or, man, I could rant about this forever. I don't know why I've never talked about this before, probably because it's too weird and, like, personal in a different way that crosses lines of, like, my career and professionalism and my experiences and my thoughts about that and whatever else. But that's the reality. I definitely, yeah, obviously there's a balance there where you can absolutely be nice. Like, I'm not saying don't be nice, but that's not, I don't believe that is the thing. That is not what you aim for as a teacher. That's something that's certainly a part of things. You need to build rapport with students in order to have some respect, right? But you also, at a certain point, some students can see through you just being nice and pleasant, and they're learning, because some students actually want to learn. And some students don't realize that they need to be learning the things that they're learning, and it's part of your job to make them see that. And sometimes they still won't see it while they're in your class, but later on they may thank you, such as parents and children, right? Like, be like, oh man, I'm really glad that I was taught discipline, or like taught how to work hard and then value that and whatever else. And at the time, I didn't really appreciate it, but later on, like, man, that sense of organization, efficiency, discipline, whatever, really helped me to organize myself in the adult world and whatever it is, right? But it's the same thing with students and a teacher-student relationship, right? Respect is needed to a certain degree, right? Like I said, you need to build a rapport with students, and people do that in different ways, right? And it's good to be a versatile, diverse teacher who can appeal to many different groups of students. I have trouble with that sometimes, depending on the group of students I'm given, or the grade sometimes matters a lot, because there's a reason I want to teach high school, and that's because they're more mature than generally more mature than students in middle school or elementary school. Sometimes you get students that aren't. But anyway, yeah, this conversation went way off the rails. Maybe I'll be talking about respect next week in the general way that I wanted to. But I guess I'm just talking about teaching and some thoughts that I have on teaching right now and what makes a good teacher. And yeah, I guess that's what this is about. What makes a good teacher? And I don't know. I don't know what this is about. This is some weird off the wall conversation. That's the thing. I don't think that I need to say this, and this is going to cross over into the other conversation, and I want to make them two different ones now that I've gotten into the thick of it here. I don't think that teachers automatically need to be respected just because they are a teacher. That's like saying all police are good. Like, there's a certain amount of respect for authority you have to have in the respect. I don't know how to explain that. It's like saying you have to respect the weather. And what that means is that you don't know what's going to happen. You respect nature in the aspect of, like, you have no idea what... I mean, you can't just go out there on any given day and assume that that it's not going to rain, that it's going to be beautiful, that the wind isn't going to do this, or that you're going in a lightning storm and you're just like, it's fine, nothing's going to happen to me. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean by, like, it's almost like respecting police doesn't necessarily mean that you have this idealization that they're amazing and they deserve all your whatever. It's respecting the fact that I might get shot if I don't comply. That's a lot different than this idea of respect that we have, which is like an admiration, a value. I'm trying to think of other words that would go into, I should have looked it up in the dictionary. I wasn't even thinking. I had a different conversation in mind. But the same thing, what I'm saying is applies to teachers. A lot of students, definitely feel the obligation to be there, and automatically they don't have respect for anyone there because they're like, I don't even want to be here, and yet I feel obligated to be here, and I don't want to do this, and I'd rather drop out and whatever. And I don't necessarily think that automatically, that's the thing, automatically you're not a good person or a good teacher just because you are a teacher. I don't think that automatically means that you need to be respected. Then it goes into this whole conversation that I'm going to get into later about when do you respect someone, how do you do that, what are my thoughts on, earning respect versus benefit of the doubt being given and all of that stuff. But I guess specifically zoning in on the teacher thing, I've said a lot about that already. And so, how do I wrap this up? There's a lot of areas where would love to improve on being a teacher, right? And there's this incredible balance that if you're trying to do things in a way that I believe is right, to create a good learning environment, which is what you should be doing, to assist students and support them in matters that are more than just academic. That plays a role that complicates things. To be someone who is approachable, which is really difficult for me sometimes with my resting bitch face. It's something that I tell students right off the bat. I'm like, hey, this thing going on here with my face, like, just don't worry about that. If I'm not looking approachable at the moment, that doesn't, I'm busy doing something and I might look like whatever. No, I'm here for you. That's what I'm here for. So there's a lot of balancing stuff. Again, academic needs versus, personal needs, right? You're in a position where you not are just a quote unquote authority figure, but you are an adult when you are working with vulnerable people, right? And that's why there's so many different ways that you could be taking advantage of vulnerable people in that position, and that's just adds so much complexity. And I mean, not necessarily going off the deep end into these extreme things, but I mean taking advantage of vulnerable people, but I mean even just teaching for the wrong reasons is taking advantage of vulnerable people, of students that just are there and they don't know any better as to what education they should be receiving, and you're taking advantage of that ignorance and naivete by being really nice and not actually teaching the curriculum or not giving them the information that they need in the way that they need to receive it because you're lazy or because you'd rather do this or that or whatever, right? If your teaching values are skewed, then that also takes advantage of the student. Because that's the thing where the masters not servants thing comes in, is that we're here to serve, but we should be masters of not only our teaching area, but of teaching and of the values that should, what that should mean. Like, that should just mean something, and everyone's going to have a slightly different interpretation of that meaning, but there needs to be some unified code by which teachers can apply themselves to and exhibit and honor, and that's never going to be 100% across the board with anything, with any type of profession or whatever. It's just not going to happen because we're humans, we're fallible, we're complex, we're different, and people are going to do what they want to do. But again, that masters not servants thing is so important to me because, no, you can serve without being a servant, right? And you can be in a position of respect, and then you've got to earn that as well, right? Because it's not something that I think should just be freely given and maintained just because. That's the thing. I've had a really old conversation about respecting your elders and how that's stupid. Like, just, you were born earlier than me. That's really cool. That has nothing to do with what you value and your actions as a human being. Like, why would I just blindly respect you, right? Like, that's, yeah, respect your elders. Like, no, like, that's not how it works. And the same thing same thing applies to teachers, for sure. Again, being able to serve people without being a servant, being able to be a master of your, this sounds so, master is kind of like a heavy word. I like it, but it's a little heavy. But again, knowing your teaching area, being passionate about your teaching areas, being passionate about supporting students, creating a safe space for students where they can thrive, where you can create learning opportunities, and being positive and assisting these people in growing and thinking critically and creating good citizenship. All these things are buzzwords, but I really believe in these things. And that's the thing, is being a master in the sense of committing at that level to your students and to the craft of teaching. Not being a servant to your admin, to the parents or to the students or to the government in the way of just doing whatever people want and getting pressure from parents to change marks because no, like this is also, it's just a complex system with your admin, and that's why it's amazing to have great admin who have your back, that you're on the same page, that you're all there for the right reasons, and that you can have conversations with them that are open, and you can figure out where they're at and where you're at and find balances with things and how to approach difficulties, because you are still your own entity in that classroom, and you have to adhere to certain standards of government, of yourself, of the school you teach at, etc. Expectations of parents and students and whatever, and why they have those expectations, and what is your school trying to promote, what are their goals, and how do they go about them. But you shouldn't be a servant to those things. You should serve those things in a masterful way. See you on another time.